Okay, so morning everybody. We are back in Sanhedrin Daf Daled Amud Aleph 4a. Let me share the screen with you. Okay, give me where have you all gone? There you are. Give me a nod if you can see the screen. Yeah, good. Okay, right. So we left off last week trying to prove that which we said earlier on. I'm just going back up here. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yossi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, Beit Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Akiva, Kulhu Sviru Lahu Yesh Aim Lamikra. We spoke about this concept of the way a word is written in the Torah and the way a word is read in the Torah. Aim Lamasora or Lamasoret means primacy is given to the written word, the way it's written. Aim Lamikra is the idea that the way a word is pronounced when we say it in the Torah has its primacy. In other words, that is more important. So there is a concept, Yesh Aim Lamasoret, Yesh Aim Lamikra. There are some Tannaim, some rabbis who give primacy to how it sounds, and others primacy to how it's written. And what Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yossi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan is that all these big hitters, Rebbe, that's Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, Beit Shammai, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Akiva, all these first division rabbis, all of them, Kulu, all of them, Svira Lahu, they hold Yesh Aim Lamikra. They hold that how you say a word when you read the Torah is more important in terms of what you deduce from it in terms of the halacha than the written word. And then he went on to try and prove his point that all of these different people hold Aim Lamikra, hold that the way a word sounds is the most important thing for deducing halacha. Rebbe, we already found that out. We've already spoken about that. That was speaking about our Mishnah. That's how we got into this conversation in the first place about Yarshi'un, whether it was spelt so it could be plural or singular. We don't need to go over that. We then went to Rabbi Yehuda ben Roetz, and he talked about, you'll remember this, the lady who has a child and is ritually impure for a number of days. He looked at the word which we pronounce shiv'im. We looked at the word which could be pronounced shiv'im, could be written shiv'im, but it's actually pronounced shavu'ayim, as 2 weeks. And he says, no, 2 weeks is what it is. And so he proves that that is the way it should be. And then we began at the end of last week's shiur to talk about Beit Shammai. Remember, there was this picture here that we had in the Steinsaltz Gemarrah here on the right-hand side of the page of the sprinkling of the blood. And we started to try and explain how Beit Shammai was in that group of people who was Aim Lamikra, who held that the spoken and the way a word is read was more important. And we only got halfway through that because I had to go off and go somewhere else. So we're going to just go back over that little bit that we started, and we will find out today how it is that Beit Shammai is included in that group of rabbis who hold Aim Lamikra. So, Beit Shammai. With regard to Beit Shammai, in other words, how do we know that he is in this category of Yesh Aim Lamikra? Ditnan, we have learnt in a Mishnah, and it helpfully tells us where that Mishnah is. It's the Vachim 36b. Beit Shammai Omrim. Beit Shammai says, Kol hanitanin al mizbeach hachitzon shenatanan b'matana achat kiper shneema b'dam zevachecha yishafech uvechatat shtei matanot. So this was talking about the sprinkling of the blood. We spoke about it last week, whether sprinkling and pouring is the same thing. We spoke about it it's in the Yom Kippur service, achat va'achat, shtayim v'shtayim, etc., etc. How it's sprinkled, there's our picture, once above and once below. So the Rabbi Beit Shammai says that you have to have at least two, we'll call it sprinklings because that's the way I've always translated it. We've got to have at least two sprinklings of blood to effect the atonement for the offering to actually work. It don't work if you ain't got two sprinklings. That's what Beit Shammai says. Okay. Well, Beit Hillel Omrin, Beit Hillel, who's always in opposition to Beit Shammai. It's almost as if Beit Shammai says black, Beit Hillel will say white. Absolutely for sure. Beit Hillel say, Af bechatat shenatan b'matana achat kiper. No, even with a chatat, even with a sin offering, I hold that you only need one sprinkling for it to work. You're meant to do more, of course, but if you do one, it still works. That is the dispute between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel in that Mishnah in Zvachim. So what's that got to do with the price of cheese here? What's that got to do with Yesh Aim Lamikra or Yesh Aim Lamasoret? So, now, Rav Huna helps us out. Amar Rav Huna. Rav Huna says, my Tama de Beit Shammai. What is the reason for the opinion of Beit Shammai? Beit Shammai was the one that says we need two sprinklings for a chatat, a sin offering, to work. How does he get that? Where's he plucked that out of thin air from? And he says, no, he's not plucked it out of thin air. And the Gemarrah very helpfully says to us, karnot, karnot, kanot. Very nice. It just repeats the word karnot, which means corners or horns, 3 times. And you're meant to know from that karnot, 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 you're meant to know exactly what you're talking about there. Now, helpfully for us, Rabbi Steinsaltz tells us exactly what we're talking about. We are talking about the Pasukim in Sefer Vayikra, chapter 4. It is in the Sedra of Vayikra, chapter 4, verses 25, verses 30 and 34 has the same verses. Where's Leon? Leon, are you with us? I can't see Leon. Where are you? He was here before, but I can't see him now. Okay, maybe we've lost him. So I'll have to do the reading. So it says in these verses, the first one is talking about the following. V'samach yado al rosh hasa'ir b'shechat Torah b'makom b'shei shechat Torah b'nei v'lakach hakohen, and the kohen shall take midam hachatat, from the blood of the chatat, be'etzba'o, with his finger, v'natan, and he shall put it al karnot mizbach ha'olah, and he shall put it on the corners of the altar. Okay, and then that is talking about the. I think that's talking about a king who has to bring a sin offering. The first one is talking about a king. The second one, which is in verse 30, I'm not going to read it out. It's exactly the same words. Is talking about an ordinary person who brings a goat for a sin offering. And the third one is talking about the one, oh, there's Leon, he's come back again now. The third one is talking about an ordinary person who brings a sheep as a chatat. So the 3 particular different episodes of bringing a sin offering, one for a king and two different ones for a regular person. And the Torah goes out of its way to say this verse, that the Kohen shall throw it or shall put it on the karnot, the corners of the Mizbeach, on each occasion, which is why the Gemarah helpfully says karnot, karnot, karnot. It's referring to those three verses where it says karnot. Now, it could quite easily have said it the first time referring to a king, and then the second and third time it could have said, and he does exactly the same as we just said before, see above. It didn't need to actually go through that whole process again and tell us the exact same words. Now, so karnot, karnot, karnot. Corners, corners, corners. Corners is in the plural. We have a well-known halachic concept that whenever it says a plural, and it doesn't actually say how many, there it refers to two, which is the minimum plural you can have. So 2, 4, 6. 3 lots of 2 is 6. Says the Gemarah, Hari kan shesh. Therefore, we have to have 6 placings of this blood on the corners of the Mizbeach. Now, the problem is that the Mizbeach is not a 6-cornered, what's a 6-cornered thing called? A sextagon. Yeah? Sextagon? Yeah, something like that. Anyway, what is it called, Leon? What's it called?
Hexagonal.
Hexagon.
Hexagon. I thought sexagon didn't sound right. Yeah, hexagon, that's right. A hexagon. Well, it's not a hexagon, is it? It's square. So it has 4 corners. So what is this Gemarah telling us about? What is Beis Shammai going to do with these 6 placings? He says, karnot, karnot, karnot. 3 lots of 2 is 6. So there's got to be 6 lots of placing on the corners, but there's only 4 corners. So he says, arba le mitzvah. The proper mitzvah is to put it on all 4 corners. And the fact that it says 6 leaves us 2 over, ushtayim la'akev, which means that if you don't do at least 2, then it doesn't work. La'akev means to prevent it. It prevents it from working. So it's something which is ma'akev, prevents the mitzvah from being performed. So, for example, the in Brit Milah, there are 3 parts to Brit Milah. There's the cutting of the foreskin, which is called chituch. There is the peeling back of the mucous membrane, that's called priya. And then there is the removing of the blood, which is called metzitza. And metzitza is not ma'akev. So in other words, if you forget to cut the foreskin, that's no good. If you forget to peel back the mucous membrane, that's no good. But if you forget to suction the blood, to remove the blood, then it doesn't matter. That doesn't make the Brit Milah not kosher. It's not ma'akev. So shtayim la'akev. So la'akev means to prevent the mitzvah from working. So because we've got 6 corners here, according to Beit Shammai, he says 4 of them are to show you that you're meant to do the mitzvah properly with 4, and the other remaining 2 is an indication we can learn from that you need to have done at least 2 corners with your blood in order for the mitzvah to work. Fine, no problem. What about Beit Hillel? Beit Hillel says kuranot with a vav, you can see that, karnot, karnot. He says, but you have to look in the Torah and you have to see that one of these words, even though we pronounce them all the same, one of them, the first one, is written with a vav. So that means 2. Karnot and karnot without the vav could be pronounced karnat, not karnot. Could be pronounced karnat, which means the horn of one. The horn as opposed to the horns or the corners. So karnat, which is how you could read it. It's not how you say it, but it's how it's spelt. Could be one, and therefore, Beit Hillel says we haven't got 6. We haven't got karnot, karnot, karnot. We've got one lot of 2 with a vav. We've got a single there, karnot without a vav, and another single. Hare kan arba. So he says we've got 4. No problem. So he says shalosh lemitzvah ve'achat la'akev. That means the mitzvah is you have to do it at least on 3 of the corners, a full mitzvah, and 1 for to tell you that if you don't do at least 1, it doesn't work. Okay. So who's going to tell me a logical problem with that? There are 2 problems with what Beit Hillel.
How was it actually written, Johnny? How is it actually written in the Torah? With the
Beit Hillel is telling us that that's how it's written. Once with a vav and twice without. Beit Shammai says it's written. Beit Shammai says it's written 3 times without.
Oh. Which one is? Okay. There's only one way it can be written in the Torah, though.
Okay, good question, Johnny. That was the second problem that I wanted to come to. Yeah. Let's just put that on one side, and let's deal with the first problem first, and then I'll come back to that. So what's the first problem, the logical problem with Beit Hillel? He says we've got 4, and he uses 3 for the mitzvah and 1 to be ma'akev. Sharon, have you got your hand up there?
No.
No. Okay. Okay, who has an offer? What's the problem with that? Okay. Well, the problem is what the Gemarah points out next. Ve'ema kulhu mitzvah. He says, well, where'd you get that from? You've made that up, that you need 3 for the mitzvah and 1 there. Why don't you just say all 4 of them are needed for the mitzvah? I understand Beit Shammai can't have all 6 corners because he hasn't got 6 corners. So he's got to do something with his extra 2. But you, Beit Hillel, you're saying there's only 4 here. 2 for a plural and 2 singulars makes 4. Why don't you just say they're all needed? Those 4 is what you have to do for the full mitzvah. Kapara bichdi lo ashkachan. I don't need any of them. If because there's no extra ones here, there's only 4 in your explanation. So that means that if I forget and I don't do any of them, it still works because I haven't got any extra to tell me which is the ma'akev. Okay, and so what's that? And he says nah. He says that's kapara bichdi lo ashkachan. Nah, he says no, that can't be. That can't be because we don't find any offering which is brought to the Beit HaMikdash which does its job of being mechaper, of attaining atonement for the person who brings the offering without at least 1 sprinkling of the blood. In other words, the sprinkling of the blood is an integral part. It's a bit like the Brit Milah example I gave you, that you can't have a Brit Milah without cutting off the foreskin. If you don't cut off the foreskin, you haven't got a Brit Milah. Says the Gemarah, if you don't sprinkle the blood at least once, at least on 1 corner, you don't have an offering. It just doesn't count. We don't find that anywhere. So therefore, if that's our starting point, come to you 1 sec, Marcel. If that's our starting point, that we have to have at least 1, then it makes sense for Beit Hillel to argue that we're going backwards here. Beit Shammai said, I need 4, and I've got 6. So therefore, I can use the other 2 to tell me that 2 are a minimum. Beit Hillel looks at it from the other way around, and he says, I need 1 as a minimum, and I've got 4. So the other 3 tell me what is the mitzvah mina mufcha, what is the lechat chila, what is the proper way to do it, ab initio, as they say, lechat chila, in the first place. So it's interesting because Beit Shammai looks at it and says, I need 4 and I've got 6, so I'll use the spare 2 to tell me that I must have two. Beit Hillel turns it on its head and says, I need one, because it's impossible to have an offering which works without having at least one sprinkling. And I've got 4, so that means 3 must be the way to do it properly. So what? Now, Karnot. Beit Hillel says that the first reading of Karnot is with a Vav. And that brings us to the second problem, which Johnny Halpin has just raised. And he's asked the question, how is it written? He spoiled it a bit for me, really, because I was going to ask David Marks how it was written as our expert Baal Korah. But now he's spoiled it, because actually, if you look in your Chumash, any of you've got a Chumash there, if you want to open it to Sefer Vayikra, Leviticus, chapter 4, verses 24, 30, and 35, I think, is the third one. No, 34. 25, 30, and 34. You will see in your Chumash that they are all written without a Vav. So we've got a problem, really. Now, that actually raises a massive problem, which I'll just come to in a sec. Marcel wanted to say something. Marcel.
I don't know if this is worth anything, but because the Mizbeach was actually a cube, you've actually got 6 90-degree corners. You've got 4 at the base, and you've got at least 2 at the top. The other 2 at the top are the start of the shipua, of the slope. So in actual fact, there are 6 proper corners to that Mizbeach. Now, I don't know.
Okay, I think that's a very interesting point. Let's just go and see if, let me just go and see if I just stop sharing that screen with you for a moment. Let me just let's get a picture of the Mizbeach up like we did last week, if I can just do that. Let me just find it for you. Altar, Temple, Jerusalem. There we go. Images. Let's go for this one here. Let's go for this one here. Where is it? Right. Excuse me, let me just find this image so I can share it with you.
No, for you. Not for you. You sure?
Right, let me share this screen with you now. Let's go back to Zoom. Right. Share this screen, there it is. Can you all see that screen? Give me a nod. Okay, so what Marcel is saying is actually we've got 6 corners. We've got 1 where I'm pointing here, 1 here is 2, the same on the other side, so that's 4, 5 and 6, and Marcel has dismissed the ones close to the shipua, close to the slope, which is, I don't think is right. Actually, I think we've got, according to Marcel's cheshbon, we should have 8, because we've got 4 here, and we've got 4 at the bottom.
I'll just go and get the Rambam's Hilchot Beit Bechira. There's a different sketch it's just upstairs. It'll take me a second to get it.
Okay. So in the meantime, you could argue from this picture that we've got 8, but the Mizbeach, the Karnota Mizbeach, appears to nobody seems to say that we've got 6 or 8, even though if we go back to our picture that we saw before of our sprinkling, it was up and down. Nobody seems to indicate that I've ever seen that there are 8 corners of the Mizbeach. So it's an interesting theory of Marcel's. nobody seems to say that, and it seems that the 4 corners of the Mizbeach are these ones here that we are pointing to at the moment. But that was an interesting point. So now, where did we get to? Where did we get to there? Where we stopped? So, all right. So, yes. So the 1 sec, Marcel. Yeah, go on, Marcel. Have you got that picture?
Well, look. I don't know if you can see this. You see there. Now then, the Shipua went right to the top, and there was a gap between, and they lifted the lambs over the gap.
Okay, but you've still got a corner, haven't you? Because you've got that area.
I suppose so, kind of.
I mean, I suppose it depends on the scale, but yeah, what you're showing us is it doesn't go right to the corner. It goes a bit below the corner, so you still do have a corner.
It be a curve, or maybe that's the corner post, the carnet on the corner.
Yeah, it certainly did. The Keren, the corner horn, did stick up. That's really interesting. Thank you for showing us that. What's interesting is that these corners did stick up. We know that because there's another halacha in the Torah that if you are running away from the Goel Adam, you go into the sanctuary and you hang on to the corners of the altar, then you can't be taken out. So there is definitely something that sticks up. Let's have a look at this picture that Marcel's showing us now, a different picture. If you all go onto speaker view and click on Marcel, you'll see that picture. Again, I think you get the impression that the corners, D there and the one that's not labeled here, you get the impression that they are sticking up, which they did. So I think that you're either going to have to say there are 8 corners or there are 4 corners. I don't think your calculation of 6 works, but definitely 8 would work. But I've never seen that anywhere, and I think that the 4 corners are the ones that we mention on a regular basis. Let's go back to the Gemarah. Right, so we now have the Gemarah here, and so the answer, the question that Johnny Halpern asked is a very good question. There can only be one way of writing it. There may be a different way of reading it from what we've written it. That's what we're talking about. But how come Beit Hillel can say that the first one is written with a vav, when in our Sefer Torah all 3 of them are written without a vav? And you'll be pleased to know, Johnny Halpern, that you're in good company, because the Rashba and the Ran both point out that fact, and they say that it's a problem. They don't have an answer. They don't have an answer, and what they say is that we must follow our Masorah, what we have as the written Torah, even though this Gemarah would seem to imply that we don't have it right, and that the first Karnot should have a Vav. The Rashba points out that we must follow our Masorah, and we have it written without a Vav. But it's a very interesting point that clearly Beit Hillel understood that there was a difference in the way they were written. Be that as it may, that was a bit of a tangent that we went off at, which is okay, because that's what the Gemarah does all the time. The point that the Gemarah
is possible a Sephardi one is with the Vav, Johnny? Sorry, Johnny? Is it possible a Sephardi Sefer Torah, which does have differences, is written with a Vav?
I would hope not, because then all those lovely codes and things that we talk about, the numbers of letters and the gematrias, all those things, they wouldn't work, would they? So I don't think that there's a difference in that word in a Sephardi Sefer Torah. But next time I'm in shul, I'll get it out and have a look, and I'll report back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so here we have a proof we have a proof, according to Beit Shammai, that we go according to how it's spoken, because he says karnot, karnot, karnot. Each one that's how it's pronounced, and he needs 6 for his drosha. So there's our proof now that Beit Shammai is one of those who is yesh aim lamikra, which is what we were trying to do in this whole little piece of Gemarah. So now we're dealt with Beit Shammai. We're now on to Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon, you'll remember, was in that list of people that Rabbi Yochanan said yesh aim lamikra. Now, how are we going to prove Rabbi Shimon's opinion that we hold like the spoken word and not the written word? And now we're going to go off another lovely tangent to prove that. Okay, Rabbi Shimon Ditanya. Rabbi Shimon, how do we know that? Ditanya, as it was taught in a Braita. Shtayim kehilchatan ushlishit afilu tefach. Rabbi Shimon Omer shalosh kehilchatan. So, without looking in the English, would any of you have known what on earth we were talking about here? The translation of those words, forget the English, cover over the English there. The translations are 2 according to halacha, and the third even a tefach, even a fist's width, about 4 inches. Rabbi Shimon says no, 3 according to the halacha, and 4 can be a fist's width. What on earth are we talking about? Now, if you didn't have the English translation to help you out there, you would have to know when you were learning Gemarah in a big boy's Gemarah what you were talking about. And actually, you wouldn't have a clue. So you'd have to go then to Rashi or something like that to help you to see what on earth he's talking about. Since we are not yet big boys, we're learning in the Steinsaltz Gemarah, he helps us very nicely and tells us he's talking about the sukkah walls. David Marks has got his hand up. Yes, David? You'll have to unmute yourself, David, because we can't hear you. David Marks? No, maybe it was a mistake. Okay, we can't unmute him, so we'll carry on. So yeah, so Rabbi Steinsaltz tells us we're talking about sukkah walls. Everybody knows the halacha, that you actually need, according to the halacha, this is how we paskin, you actually need 2 and a bit walls in a sukkah. You need 2 proper walls, and the third wall can be just a partial wall, just 1 tefach wide, 4 inches wide. So you have a sukkah, which is made of 1 wall, 2 walls, and the third wall is a tiny little bit, and that is a kosher sukkah. That is the halacha. Like this, the first part of this Braita, which says Shtayim kehilchatam, 2 in brackets walls of the sukkah need to be kehilchatan, proper walls, or shlishit, and the third one afilu tefach, can be even a small, tiny little wall of 4 inches in width. Rabbi Shimon disagrees, and he says no, shalosh kehilchaton. We need 3 proper walls, and the 4th one can be a tiny little wall of just 4 inches in width. So, very nice. We've got a dispute between the first part of the Braita and the opinion of Rabbi Shimon. So, again, where have they pulled this out from? They haven't just pulled it out of thin air or a rabbit out of a hat. Bamai kamiflegi. In what way are they arguing? What is the basic concept of the argument that they have between them? Rabbanan, the rabbis, i.e. the first opinion, Savri, they hold yesh aim lamasoret. The Rabbi Shimon Savar yesh aim lamikra. Exactly our topic. The argument is whether they go by the written word or the way it sounds. The rabbis go by the written word, aim lamasoret, and Rabbi Shimon holds aim lamikra. Now, what are we talking about here? So the Gemarah goes on to explain. And again, like we had karnot, we have the same concept. Rabbanan Savri, the rabbis hold yesh ein lamasoret. They hold that there is a primacy to the written word, and the written word says basukot, basukot, basukot. Again, 3 times we have this word basukot. So there we have it. Basukot, basukot, basukot. And as you can see, the first 2 are spelled without a vav. The third one is spelled with a vav. Now, by now, we now know how this whole thing works, don't we? It works because the plural is a minimum of 2. You can't get away with the third one being a singular because it's got a vav in it. So it has to be plural. So there's 2. Sukkot could be read as sukat, because that is how it's written. Remember, there's no vowels in the Torah. You could read that as sukat, and you could read that as sukat. So you could read it as 1, because it's written chaser, missing the vav. So you have 1 for that, 1 for that, 2 for that, harikan arba. So we have 4. 4 walls seem to be needed for the sukkah. Okay, fine. So you're going to say to me, right, so you need 4 walls. What's his business with half a wall, a wall of 1 tefach? What's all that about? Says the Gemarah, dal chad kra legufei. Okay, dal kra chad legufei. You have to remove one of those words sukkah, because that, you need that, because that's introducing the subject. Where are we talking about here? Tells us where we're talking about. Leviticus 23:24, which is over here in Parshat Emor. I think it's in Parshat Emor. 1 second. It is in Parshat Emor. Here we go. It says as follows, 23:24. 23:42. I was being a bit dyslexic there. There we go. Basukot teshvu shivat yamim. 7 days you shall dwell in a sukkah. Kol ha'ezrach b'Yisrael yeshvu basukot. All the natives in Israel shall dwell in a sukkot. Laman yedu dorotechem kei basukot oshafti et bnei Yisrael. So that you shall know, the generation shall know that I caused the bnei Israel to dwell in sukkot when they came out of Israel. We have that word sukkot 3 times in 1.5 psukim. The first one, says the Gemarah, dal chad kra legufa. You need 1 of those because that's what it's talking about. It's talking about sukkot. But why do we need it 2nd and 3rd time? We already know we're talking about sukkot here. So therefore, that means we have at'ai hilchata garata lashlishit bu'ukimta atefach. So we've taken away 1 of the Rabbanan's 4. Remember, the Rabbanan had 4 walls. It had 2 for Sukkot with a Vav, 1 for Sukkot without a Vav, and 1 for Sukkot without a Vav. That's 4. Take away 1. Take away 1 because you need that for the actual subject. So you're left with 3. So you'll say to me, fine, if you weren't left with 3. So we're still asking a question, where do you get that 1 of those 3 should be a tiny little wall of a tefach? Gemarah says, the 3 of these walls that remain, 1 of them, it's a halacha Moshe Har Sinai, that Moshe received a Masorah, a tradition. You just have to accept it, says the Gemarah, that Moshe Rabbeinu received a tradition that 1 of the walls of a sukkah does not have to be complete. It can be a minimum wall of 1 tefach, 1 fist's width. And therefore you had 3. 1 of those is allowed to be a fist width. So the rabbis say what you're left with for a kosher sukkah is 2 full walls and 1 diddly little wall, like we said in the Breita. Shtein kehilchatan ushlishit afilu tefach. 2 proper ones, the third one even just a fist's width. So that's consistent with the Brisa. Rabbi Shimon, on the other hand, basukot, basukot, basukot. He is the one that says, no, I don't care how it's written. It's how it sounds that's important. And how it sounds is basukot, which is plural. So we have 2, 4, 6. Harikan, shesh. So we have 6. We have 6 mentions of the walls. Dal, chad, kra, legufei. We need one of those words, sukkot, because that's what it's talking about. Same concept as the rabbi said. But he's not taking off 1, he's taking off 2, because it's plural. So he's left with 2 lots of 2. Pashu lahu arba. He's left with 4. Atai hilchata grata l'rviit u'ukmei atefach. He accepts the Masorah, the tradition from Moshe Rabbeinu, that we take off one of those walls and make it into a diddly little wall of 1 tefach. So he had 4. He's now got 3 and a bit. So he can say in his part of the Breita, Rabbi Shimon Omer Shalosh kehilchatan, 3 according to the halacha, in other words, 3 proper walls, or revi'it afilu tefach, and the 4th one even a tefach. So now we have proved, Sharon, I'll come to you in a sec, we have proved that Rabbi Shimon holds aim lamikra, because he wants to say that each one of these words to sukkot is 2, because that's how you say it, not how you write it. So now we're only left with Rabbi Akiva to prove his position, and we will come to that in a sec after Sharon.
And don't answer again if this is off topic. Would one be having a conversation? I know this is about counting, and about Masorat versus vocalization. But would one care about how many proper walls of a sukkah there were in terms of using unstable improvised walls versus leaning against a building wall? Does this have to do with sukkot sometimes looking like it could be plural because of smichut, a grammar rule? What do we come from what comes from this conversation? Is it only about the Masoret versus the vocalization?
Well, what comes from this Breita, they're using this Breita to prove our point. But what actually comes from the Breita is actually the halacha l'maaseh, what we actually do. So the source of our halacha today, 1500 years after the Gemarah, the source is this Gemarah, this Breita, which tells us that the Rabbanan, and we hold like the Rabbanan, we do not hold like Rabbi Shimon, we hold like the Rabbanan. That halacha today, you need 2 walls that must stand up on their own, and the third one is allowed to be a small tefach width wall. So what comes out of this conversation is actually the halacha l'maisa. Now, when it says kehilchatan, when it says over here, in this part here, shtaim kehilchatan, it doesn't mean like the halacha. It means standard walls, the way a proper wall should be. In other words, something which will stand up. You can't have just like a piece of paper, or it has to be a substantial thing that will hold up on its own. Which is why, by the way, there's also partially the source of a machloket between the poskim on sukkah as to what you can have as your substance for a wall. As you know, here in Israel, we often use material which is stretched out over a frame. There are some people that say that frame has to have a certain height to it. You can't have a big gap in it because then the wall is not considered a proper wall. Johnny Halpin was just indicating they're talking about the height of a wall. The height of the wall has to be at least 10 tfachim, at least 40 inches, because a wall doesn't count if it's less than 40 inches. So this Braita, where it says that is the source of most of the halachot about the construction of the walls of a sukkah. So it's an important Braita. We are using it here not for the halacha of sukkah, that's used elsewhere. We're using it to prove our point about who holds what in terms of primacy of written word versus vocalization, okay?
Yes. Yes, I got that. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're just left with Rabbi Akiva. We shall just have time to go through Rabbi Akiva's opinion as to why he holds aim lamikra. So Rabbi Akiva, with regard to Rabbi, this is a bit complicated. You have to stay with me on this one. It's not quite so straightforward as the sukkah walls, because it's all about the halachot of ritual impurity, about which most of us know very little, because of course it's not halacha l'maisa to us. It's not things that really affect us because we're all ritually impure. But back in the day when there was a Beit HaMikdash and we wanted to eat of the korbanot, we wanted to eat of the sacrifices, and you could only do that in a state of tahara, a state of ritual purity, then the halachot of how you became impure and how you avoided becoming impure, more to the point, was very, very important. Less important to us now, and so it's sort of got a bit out of our sort of realm of knowledge. But nevertheless, even though the Gemarah was written after the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, it was fairly, well, relatively speaking, close to that time. And of course, we're meant to be preparing for tomorrow, when Mashiach will come and rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, so that we need to know all these halachot. Of course, we haven't really fulfilled that because we don't, but that's what this is going to be all about. So stay with me. It's a little bit complicated. Rabbi Akiva. So how do we prove that Rabbi Akiva holds aim lamikra, that he holds that vocalization is the most important? Detanya. Another Braita, a different Braita. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Minayin larviit dam shayatza mishnei metim shemetame be'ohel. Okay, there is a halacha, says Rabbi Akiva, that the quantity of blood which comes out of a corpse, which is sufficient to make a room that corpse is in ritually impure, so that anybody that goes into that room becomes ritually impure, is a quarter of a lug. Revi'it, a quarter. It's a quantity of blood. There's a machloket as to how much that quantity is. Doesn't really matter. It's a quantity of blood. So we all know that if there is a dead body in a room, we all know that a kohen cannot go in there. And the reason for that is because a kohen is not allowed to become metameh, is not allowed to become tameh. We can go in there, us non-kohenim. Mervyn, you can't go in there because you're a holy priest, but we can go in there because we're not holy like Mervyn, and we're already tameh anyway. But what happens if this room, the corpse is now taken away from the room, but it was sadly a violent death, and a certain quantity of blood was spilled during the death, and there is this revi'it, this quantity of blood which is in the room. The corpse has gone. Excuse me. The corpse has gone, but the blood remains. Rabbi Akiva says, there is a halacha that says, if there is this quantity of blood in the room, that will make the room tameh, and it will make anybody going into the room tameh. But he goes one step further, and he says, Revi'it dam, a revi'it of blood, sheyatsa mishnei meitim, that comes out of two corpses. So let's say you had two people who were dead in this room, and each one of these corpses exuded half a revi'it. Rabbi Akiva says the two half revi'its combine to make one full revi'it, and that makes the room tameh. Okay? Why? Shneema, as it says in the verse, and Rabbi Steinsaltz tells where it is, Vayikra 21:11. Al kol nafshot meit lo yavo. You shall not come nafshot meit. Now the word nafshot means souls, plural. Nafshot meit. Meit is a dead body. So it literally means, he's translated it here, he shall not come upon any dead bodies. But the literal translation is, he shall not come, al kol nafshot meit, on all the souls of a dead body, lo yavo, he shall not come. So, what is nafshot? What is another word that the Torah uses for nefesh? Nefesh, he hadam. Nefesh, the soul of a being, is equated with its blood. That's why we're told we don't eat the blood of an animal. We have to remove the blood of an animal. That's part of the dinim of kashrut, is to remove as much of the blood as possible. Why? Ki nefesh hi adam. Let's ask David Marks, where's that from? David, where's that from?
Ki hadam hu nefesh in Re'eh.
See, I said it the wrong way around. See, I'm not as expert Baal Korah as David Marks. I said the nefesh was the dam. The pasuk actually says ki dam hu nefesh. The blood is the soul. Thank you, David. So the blood is the soul. So if the blood is the soul, what Rabbi Akiva is saying, that you can read this pasuk on all the bloods, plural, of a dead body, lo yavo, you shall not come. Plural means two. So Rabbi Akiva says we learn from this that the blood which has come out of two dead bodies can combine to make your quantity, which will make the room tameh. And of course, Rabbanan, so he says here, shtei nefashot, two lots of souls or two lots of blood, v'shiur echad, combined to make one quantity. A shiur is a quantity. That's why what we're having is a shiur. It means a quantity of learning. A shiur is a quantity. So two bloods combined to make one quantity. The Rabbanan, the rabbis on the other hand, says nafshot ktiv. It's written without a vav, and you could say that was singular. It could be nafshat mate. It could be the soul of a dead person. We don't say it like that. We say it nafshot. Yes, the rabbis agree that that's what we say, but how it's written is without a vav, and it could be that the way it's written is singular. So the rabbis hold aim la mesoret, and Rabbi Akiva holds aim la mikra. Q-E-D. We have now proved, if we go right back to our statement of Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosei, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe, we've proved him. We know that from our own Gemarah. Rabbi Yehuda ben Ro'etz, what was his one? I can't remember now off the top of my head. Yar Shi'un. That's right. He uses Yar Shi'un to make them guilty. we proved him. Beit Shammai, we proved that this morning. Beit Shammai was because, what was Beit Shammai? Because of karnot. The three use of the word karnot. Who was the next one after Beit Shammai was Rabbi Shimon, and he was the one that we used his one for Sukkot. The roles of the Sukkah. And Rabbi Akiva, we have proved on the basis of his saying about the blood which combines to make one shiur for making the room tameh. So we've now proved Rabbi Yochanan's statement that all of these big hitting rabbis are on his side, presumably, otherwise he wouldn't quote them. That the aim lamikra, the spoken way, the vocalized way of the word, is the most important thing. Now,
Johnny, can I just interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
In the Chumash, the word nafshot has got 2 dots on the shin, left and right.
Yeah, the one on the right is to tell you it's a shin.
Yeah.
And the one on the left is to tell you it's nafshot and not nafshat or something else. The one on the left is the oh bit.
Okay.
Or if you were in Jewish day, the oi bit.
Right. No, there's a shin with 1 dot on it. What does that mean?
Well, that's just the dot to tell you it's a shin and not a sin.
A shin, a sin. Okay.
If it was a dot was just on the left, it would be a sin.
Then, yeah, correct.
If the dot's just on the right, it's a shin. And if you've got one on either side, it's a shin with an oi. So nafshois or nafshot, depending on how.
That's
how you pronounce. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll come to you in a sec, Howard. I'm going to leave the Gemarrah here because that's a good place to stop. We're going to start a little. It's not a new subject, but it's a new part of the subject there. So we've managed to achieve proving all those things. Howard, you wanted to ask a question or say something?
Well, I'm reminded now that many years ago I attended, I think, a Gemarrah shiur for about an hour on how many lugim of blood would render a mikveh ritually impure. But what I never found out was how big is a lug?
Okay.
What is the quantity of a lug?
Okay, various different opinions. Like everything else, it's all based on different opinions of working out quantities. So, for example, the amount that you have to drink in a cup of wine for kiddush is also based on this, because it talks about a revi'it, a quarter, means a quarter of a lug. So I don't know the figures off the top of my head. I would have to look them up. If anybody else knows the figures off the top of their head, speak up now. Otherwise, I will send you a little email or a WhatsApp giving you the various different quantities of opinions of how much is a lug, and therefore how much is a revi'it. And this is very, very important halachically. The reason it's very important halachically is this: when it comes to Yom Kippur, and a person needs to drink because he's not well, there is a certain quantity below which is not considered drinking, and that is called chetzi shiur, half a shiur, less than a shiur. What is a shiur? A shiur is a revi'it, a quarter. So in order to know what that is, there's different opinions. Some say it's 18 mils, some say it's 36 mils, and that's all based on which opinion you take as to which is a lug. I don't know them off the top of my head. I used to know them once upon a time, but I've forgotten them, so I'll have to look them up. But yes, basically that is it's a very important thing, how much is a lug, and I'll let you know when I've looked it up. Julia and then Liam. Julia first.
Well, mine's very basic, but the Rabbonim came from all over. Was there no such thing as regional accents in those days? Because doesn't that affect pronunciation?
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, a word is a word, isn't it? I mean, a plural is a plural and a singular is a singular.
Yeah, but we're talking about pronunciation, aren't we?
Well, it's very likely that the Korean Ktiv, all the things that were written differently to the way they're spoken, probably did come from regional differences in how things were spoken. Yeah, that's probably a good logical explanation as to how they came about. What we have is a Masorah, a tradition of what they are and what they mean. Even if you're right that they came about through different accents, the fact is we have a Masorah as to what they mean. Leon.
According to the glossary in my art scroll, Masachet, it's the volume of 6 eggs.
What is a revi'it or a lug?
No, a lug.
Okay. Now, so a
quarter. A revi'it is 1.5 eggs.
Okay, so that's probably agreed by everybody. The problem is, how big's an egg? Okay, what are we? And that's where the discussion comes in. Are we talking about an ostrich egg? Are we talking about a starling's egg? Are we talking about a chicken's egg? Are we talking about a big chicken's egg, a turkey egg? And that's where the various different opinions come in as to what is a lug. In terms of how many mils it is, or cc's, there's different machloket, and I can't remember them off the top of my head, but I'll let you know once I've looked it up. Thank you for that, Leon. So lug is 6 eggs. Very good. Any other comments before we close? Okay. In that case, I will unmute you all and I will say goodbye.
Goodbye. Thank you, Johnny.
Thanks, Johnny. Bye.
Thank you. Great, sure.
Very interesting.